Dude, I've been given some truly wise advice multiple times on this channel, in fact. Advice such as, if you don't like Halo so much, just play a different game. And I'm over here like, holy, you're right. Why didn't I think about that sooner? It's not like I've been way ahead of you for the past 10 years, dude. And you know something else? A game I've been waiting on just came out 2 weeks ago. And that's why I'm here today, because after a mere 90 hours of service to the God Emperor of mankind, I want to tell people that Space Marine 2 is a pretty good game. Seriously, if you have the money to play Space Marine 2, if you're someone who loves third-person co-op shooters, maybe you're someone who has an itch for it due to being a fan of Gears of War, by all means, absolutely play this game. I cannot express enough how happy I am to see a video game title within 40k do so well. No, I mean, really, my voice is monotone as hell, so I always sound dead on the inside. But Warhammer 40k just feels like an afterthought within the video game industry, something that rarely sees any massive wins when you'd expect the opposite. And I say that as someone who isn't super entrenched in the lore of 40k. Like, I've played a few games like Dawn of War, the first Space Marine game, Dark Tide, and a couple other niche games here and there. I know some of the 40k lore, like what factions exist, the different sub-factions within the Imperium of Man, the Forces of Chaos, the Horus Heresy. Like, I love how insane, dark, and badass this world is, but holy crap, would it be a nightmare to live in. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, if you're a fan of Warhammer 40k, if you're a fan of these types of settings, this game definitely feels like it was meant for you, which is so refreshing to see, because it could have been the opposite, like what you hear from other forms of media, the reaching of the broader audience. Those who have heard me talk about Halo, or perhaps are familiar with Halo, unfortunately a bit too familiar with how these once beloved products have fallen to the chaos gods. But praise the Emperor, none of that despicable heresy is to be found here. No battle passes, no in-game shop or store-bought currency, no attempt to damage the authenticity due to some political issues no one cares about, when they just want to sit down and be immersed in a different world entirely. A bleak world where the only thing that matters and should matter is war. Well, with those initial thoughts out of the way, I would like to talk about the game now, so please don't take this the wrong way when I say this, just bear with me. Honestly, I found the story parts of the campaign to be pretty basic. It's by no means the most intricate story ever told, with a complex narrative, or goes above and beyond when exploring different characters, especially the villain, who was extremely forgettable. However, because of the type of game this is, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, with the exception of the antagonist. I believe the game does a good job supporting the campaign, not just with its mostly satisfying gameplay, but also by presenting its story, its world, with probably some of the best looking visuals I've seen in a modern video game. It's just so fucking cool. Like, the game looks incredible even when I'm not running it on ultra settings. The novelty of seeing those miniatures brought to life, seeing the Astra Militarum engage the Tyranids, while you play as Ultramarine Titus charging into the fray to slaughter the enemies of the Imperium. They absolutely nailed the visuals and just what you'd expect a 40k game to look like in a third-person shooter, playing as a Space Marine. The combat is satisfying, the weapons feel and sound amazing for the most part. I love the glory kills, or executions as they call it here. You feel like an actual Space Marine. I'm so sorry, I'm trying my best not to fanboy out, since I like the 40k universe and I've been waiting for a game like this to come out for so long. But I would like to start being a bit more nuanced with my take on the game. Don't get me wrong, I like the game, I like the campaign, but I do have some complaints, and I feel like these issues become a bit more transparent whenever you engage with the operations, which is the main PvE multiplayer mode that also ties into the campaign story, meaning that this is probably why the campaign doesn't have a progression system or reward structure. These are exclusive to operations, and I understand that. It makes sense that the main PvE mode, gameplay-wise, would get all the love and attention you'd expect to see in the campaign, but this absolutely has to harm its replayability, if not also diminish its gameplay. I would have liked to see some kind of upgrade system for Titus, like a way to upgrade his armor points, or have a different set of abilities to choose from that aren't tied to the AI companions or certain scenarios. I think this is where the campaign for Space Marine 2 being more built for co-op rather than single player does it a disservice. All they really give you is just more weapons to play with, no way to upgrade them or unlock different variants. If you exclude the story, including those beautiful cutscenes that really are just amazing to rewatch, the campaign feels like an introduction to operations. I mean, it's a requirement to unlock more operation missions after all. I played through the whole thing once on veteran mode and haven't really cared to go back to it. Anyway, look, these issues I have with the campaign most likely won't bug you. It may sound like it bugs me a lot, but trust me, while I have, preferences here and there, I still enjoyed my time with it. And there's a chance they're going to be adding more in the future, so we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, the combat's fun enough, the visuals, and even some of the references to the lore, at least ones I could recognize, were neat. I think the majority of 40k fans will be pleased with what they did regardless. Which brings me to the mode you'll most likely be spending most of your time in. Operations. There's not really much to explain here. Like, if you're familiar with the gameplay of the campaign, basically any of the gameplay footage I've been showing you, or maybe you've seen a trailer or two, then you should know what to expect. These are PvE match-made missions, but you got classes to choose from, class perks, weapon perks, different builds you can make. Refunding perks you earned is free when you're in the armory, so you don't feel too punished for trying different things. Customization, I mean, pick whatever color you want from the ones you have unlocked. Change the individual pieces of your armor to more closely match the badass Space Marine aesthetic that appeals to you. How do you unlock all these neat perks and cosmetics? Would you believe it? Just play the fucking game. Use that earned in-game currency in the heraldry system, where you can target a specific Space Marine legion or chapter to get more colors and emblems. Holy crap. A progression system where some disgusting heretic can't just swipe their credit card to buy out. Listen, as someone who's had to listen to fans from this shitty game called Halo Infinite tell me how great the customization is in that game, how much they love to willingly scam themselves paying for expensive cosmetic bundles, engaging with Space Marine 2's progression system is just such a breath of fresh air. It's simple, no battle pass or in-game shop, and I love how authentic it all feels. Like, you look and feel like a Space Marine. Your squad look and feel like Space Marines. Nothing feels out of place or absurd. You're definitely not gonna see any freaks walking around with cat ears, that much I can tell you, or some cosmetic options being forced in for some attempt by a corporation to be preachy about social issues that most gamers don't give a shit about, when all they want to do is just play a video game. If I have to find things to not like about how they handle cosmetic unlocks, I guess it's the DLC. Some of the colors and other cosmetics are locked behind the season pass. But obviously, I prefer this to not be here and have full access to the game I paid for, but I think there's enough to unlock in the game that this probably won't bug you too much. It's just one of those things I can't help but frown at, but the game is apparently getting more free content drops in the future. New missions, new modes, new enemies, whatever that might mean, like a new special enemy or a new faction, who knows. Depending on how that all goes, I may toss them some extra money and get the season pass myself. Seriously, the customization for Space Marine 2 isn't complex, and that's why it's so appealing. It's like a return to the old ways of video gaming. You want a certain thing, you play the game and get it yourself. It's great. Oh, did I mention there's PvP in the game? I honestly didn't care much for it. You got your basic modes, you unlock weapons by leveling your veteran rank. I played like maybe 10 matches and it was okay, but I just wanted to go back to operations. I didn't really care too much to learn the maps and the best ways to play the objective. But maybe whenever I tucker myself out from all the operations, I'll go back and try out the PvP again in the future. Sorry, I just don't have much to say about it. But I do want to leave PvP on a high note, there are post-game lobbies for PvP. Yo, Halo Infinite, take notes, what the hell? It's like some real-life tech priest found an STC, and it had the schematics for post-game lobbies. They found it, dude. Long-lost technology from the golden age of gaming. Speaking of matchmaking, I do want to get one other thing off my chest. I do think matchmaking in operations is kind of scuffed at times. For instance, I love Sniper, and unfortunately the game doesn't tell you if you're queuing into a lobby that already has a sniper, and you can only have one person of a particular class in the group, which is completely fine, but there's a lot of moments where I just end up leaving the lobby, and you can say, oh, just play a different class, dude. Yeah, but if I'm queuing into Ruthless mode because I'm still leveling my sniper, or I just want to stock up on some relics, and I don't have another class that is geared enough to handle the hardest difficulty, you can't just play a different class. In that scenario, an AI bot would be much more useful, or literally somebody else. The game should not put you in lobbies where a sniper or that class you want to play as is already present. Perhaps it's a bit difficult because of the battle barge hub world they have, but it would be nice when you join an ongoing mission if you were told beforehand a class you want to play as is already in the group, so I can avoid having to sit through more loading screens. And I don't know what it is, but sometimes whenever I start an operation, I'll get like one dude to join me, or vice versa. I join a lobby with one other person and the game will just not give us another player, but sometimes it works flawlessly and people will join in pretty quickly. Regardless, this doesn't happen all the time, but I know damn well there's a lot of people playing the game. The game has crossplay, which is fucking awesome. Ain't no way it should be difficult to find another battle brother to help me out, dude. Hopefully they make it more seamless in the future. It's tolerable for me, but I can see people getting annoyed a bit with the matchmaking. Oh, and I do want to steer this conversation back towards the gameplay, since I've heard a couple complaints about it here and there, and I do believe some of these complaints are valid since I've experienced a couple of these complications myself. The parry mechanic is something I've seen a good amount of frustration with. What I will say, and I don't know if I can count this as a negative towards the game, the parry mechanic when using anything but a fencing weapon feels a bit off at times. Obviously, I know if you're using block, like a blocking weapon, you can't parry, but with a balanced weapon, I can see and have seen people get frustrated with the parry mechanic, especially when the game tells you whenever you see the blue indicator, that is the time to press parry. But some enemies, like the Ravener or that bastard with the whip, it doesn't always work. Some of these attacks are far too delayed that you'll either end up blocking or getting your HP bar chunked. I think that's kind of bull crap. It still gets me from time to time, but it's still manageable if you know when the correct time is to parry, as long as it's not a projectile attack or an orange and red highlighted attack, you can parry it. But be careful, because sometimes red indicators do not always pop up, especially when you're not the main target of an attack. If you're struggling with this mechanic, the best advice I could give you is, when you have the opportunity to do so, get yourself a fencing weapon. I swear, blocking is just a pain in the ass when you're getting swarmed by multiple enemies. You get locked into an animation, making it difficult to dodge projectiles or an unblockable attack if one is coming your way. It's better to just parry with a fencing weapon, as it kills cannon fodder enemies while knocking some other enemies back. You have a lot more time to breathe and more opportunities for more parries, gun strikes, and executions. That doesn't mean you can just parry spam and never die. You still have to time it, but the difference is really noticeable. Parrying is just such an important mechanic in this game, but like I said, it can be a bit strange. Other than that, like once you get more familiar with the mechanics, things like understanding your role, like the best way to play your class, once you start getting more perks and an actual build going, the game is much more fun. I can't really comment on the overall balance of the game. I haven't played enough of all the classes to see which one is better or worse compared to the others. Actually, you know what? The assault class could use a buff. Like, some more damage resistance when you're airborne so you don't get shot to hell in the air. A lot of the perks, along with the damage output, it just feels lacking. I do believe it is the worst class to play when it should be the most fun, considering it has a freaking jump pack, and maybe buff some of the bolt guns, since the only ones I found to be useful were the grenade launcher and the stalker bolt guns. Anyway, this isn't supposed to be a video about builds and what's best to use, so I'm gonna stop myself there. So with all that being said, listen, the game is not perfect by any means. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I mean, how can I go out and claim that when I have all these other issues with it and preferences? There are still some other things I could mention, like a couple performance issues on PC, and the music. It's not bad music, it's just not gonna be as memorable compared to the other soundtracks other 40k games have had, which is kind of a shame because it sounded good at the start of the game, but eventually it grew a bit stale. Like in a game that is focused on slaughtering hordes of enemies while being outnumbered and set in the Warhammer 40k universe, this would have been the time to have some absolute bangers, but it is what it is. Alright, well, I'll stop myself there because ultimately I still believe Space Marine 2 is a pretty good game. I've completed all the operations on the hardest difficulties and I still want more. I still want to max out all the other weapons and prepare myself for the next higher level difficulty mode that will eventually come out this year. There's a lot to like about it, and it being set in Warhammer 40k just makes it feel so much sweeter. This has to be one of the best Warhammer 40k games on the market right now. And one of the coolest things about Space Marine 2 for me personally is that it rekindled my interest in 40k lore. It's been a long time since a video game made me want to delve into the lore outside of its main story. And yes, I'm aware of the CEO of Saber's comments on the Asmongold video and that they've apparently worked on older Halo games in the past. I 100% feel everything they said. They're absolutely right, and I think it really shows why Space Marine 2 turned out the way it did. Despite all its flaws, it doesn't really feel malicious to me. This is a game that I believe deserves all the love and support it's getting, which is one of the main reasons why I made the video. I want to see it thrive and spread the word. I think it's important to support games like these, to have them be a beacon for other AAA studios and developers that have lost their way, that have fallen to the ruinous powers. Anyway, why the hell are you still here? Go play the game. It's great. Get out of here.